Hey guys, good to be back with you again. Thought I'd talk really quickly here about a topic that's of, I think, deep interest to some of us who are in the replay world. I know that there are other people not quite as interested in it. This is that age-old question of which team is the best team of all time, and there are a lot of different things we want to look at. I think I've talked a little bit about this in the past, where we talked about, this old baseball Think Factory project. They used Diamond Mine Baseball, ways to look at, how to place teams together, some of the problems that come along with computer management and stuff like that. I think, though, if you're really going to look at this type of project, the very first question you have to ask is what teams you want to include, and that is a much harder question to answer than you might think. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at this. I actually wrote a blog post about this a couple of weeks ago, but I figure we can take a look at this here together. So one of the most obvious ways in which you can tell that a team is one of the most dominant teams of all time is by looking at the number of wins they had in the regular season. We tend to like to look at the number of wins, by the way, not the winning percentage. We'll get to that in a second. Generally, I believe people think that teams that won 100 wins or more in a Major League Baseball season are qualified to be considered one of the greatest teams of all time. The reason why I say this is something you can see right here again in this lovely blog post. Let me zoom in a little bit. This is on Chrome, so we might have ads pop up, but we'll see what happens. Should have used the other one. You can see ChatGTP is there to help us. So you know about the 06 Cubs, the 2001 Mariners, the 116 wins. There's the Yankees in 98, the Indians, and the Dodgers here with 111. That 54 Indians team, of course, a little bit controversial. 1909 Pirates, 27 Yankees, on and on and on. We could go down this list of teams, including some you might have forgotten about. 2018 Red Sox is not a team that I remember all that well, or the 2021 Giants, the 2019 Astros. In fact, when I go through this list, I notice that there are a lot of teams that are recent. 2021 Dodgers, 2019 Dodgers, 2022 Astros, and on. You'll find a whole bunch of teams that are a little bit more recent than you would think, and you might start asking questions about that. Now, as you go through this list, you'll realize not only that there are a lot of recent teams, more recent teams than you would think, and I remember a couple of years ago when people were talking about, we're never going to see one of those, dominant teams in the regular season again because it's so easy to get into the postseason with the wild card and stuff like that. You don't have to win 100 games anymore. I mean, technically, you never had to. The Mets back in 73 won, 83? But we'll talk about them another time. The problem that we have to explain is why we constantly are seeing so many teams in the last 3, 4, 5 years that are breaking that 100-win barrier, which is not quite what it was before. In fact, when you scroll down through here, you'll see that there's well over 100 teams that won 100 games in the regular season. This list that I got, what website is this from? This is from Baseball Almanac, so it includes 2023, which is better than my own list. I know I need to update stuff, and you'll see there's the 2023 Orioles and the Dodgers, neither of whom made it very far in the postseason. 100 wins today is not quite the same thing as 100 wins before. Now, I'll show you here why we don't like to look at winning percentage, because if you look at the 700-plus winning percentage teams, this is from Wikipedia, you wind up with teams that maybe won't feel quite right? I mean, we talk about the 1886 Chicago White Stockings. Raise your hand if you can name more than one player on that team. 1886 Detroit Wolverines. I mean, it's not like they played no games, right? But these are shorter seasons, definitely. 1897 Beaneaters I could see. But yeah, 1887 Browns, the American Association. I mean, I don't know. You got to really ask yourself if you want to have a list that includes so many teams from the 19th century and then only one very, very recent team, which is also interesting to see. And the big thing, of course, if you know your teams or the teams missing here, you do have the 98 Yankees who barely make this list. But there are a lot of other teams that I think people would consider one of the best teams of all time that don't make it. So there's some problems here that you see with both of these lists. One of the biggest problems, of course, is that you get teams that are basically carbon copies of each other. I mean, if we scroll back up here, as you can see, we got the 2022 Dodgers here, we got the 2019 Dodgers here, and the 2021 Dodgers here. So you want to have a league where you have 3 Dodgers teams in a row. We can make it 4 in a row if we scroll down over here. Apologies, I'm spoiling things myself. Oh, I missed the 2021 Rays. Lots of teams with 100 wins. And then there are a bunch of teams that didn't make the playoffs, on and on. Now, the other option that we have is to look at the domination index, which I've looked at only up through 2022. So I haven't added in the 2023 numbers. And here's the National League where, again, you see the same problem. See, the Dodgers from 2020, 2021, 2022 have all made it up here, along with the 1906 Cubs. Boy, the 2022 Dodgers make the 1906 Cubs look like it's nobody's business, right? 17 Giants, we know about them. There's your 86 Mets, 75 Reds, 88 Mets are on this list. Boy, I bet you didn't expect that one. There's the 2019 Dodgers, and on and on. We can keep going down this list. Some teams that we know about, some teams that are surprises. There finally are your Baltimore Orioles from the 1890s, the original Orioles. So you can make the argument that using the domination index, using this so-called SD score is a better way of looking at this. I don't know if it's the best way, however. I don't think that this is necessarily the best way to move forward. Looking at the American League here, we will see fewer teams that stand out from recent years. And man, the 98 Yankees look incredible. 3.877 standard deviations are almost as good as the 2022 Dodgers. Were the Dodgers really that good? Wow. We have to play and find out. But here's your favorite, the 2015 Blue Jays that I keep talking about, who have this incredible run scored differential advantage that is the best in American League history, and I think the best in the history of both leagues. Anyway, you can go through this and you'll see some teams that, look like they really do belong, and you'll come across some teams where you're sort of scratching your head a little bit, and you'll say, yeah, I don't remember, this team necessarily being so dominant. 2022 Yankees, I guess we could argue that they were a good team, but were they really better than the 1970 Orioles? Right? What about the 68 Tigers? They were a good team, but were they really better than, I don't know, let's see if we have another great team here, the 61 Yankees? I think that most of us, if not all of us, have read what Bill James said about the 61 Yankees 20-something years ago. Now I'm feeling old. But, the 61 Yankees weren't that bad, right? I do think that they belong in this discussion. Whereas I would look at, say, the 68 Tigers and say, yeah, I'm not quite sure, I don't know. Doesn't have that feel, if you know what I'm saying. And then you have real big questions too, like the 1905 White Sox, who we'll talk about later. This is one of those teams that are very, very difficult to include in this type of league, and it's the sort of thing that you kind of have to put in. So what's the answer? Well, I say right here kind of what the answer is, and I'll just go ahead and say it to you instead of reading it off, because reading stuff on a video is a little bit boring. There's a couple of things that I think we have to keep in mind when we're looking at this. The biggest one is that I think you have to go about this type of project and choosing teams like you're choosing somebody to work at your company, right? You got to look at the resume. You got to look at the full picture, right? You can't just be looking at like one thing, right? If we're only going to look at the one-loss record, then we're going to get some teams thrown in there that we're like, the project's not even fun anymore. I don't know any of these players, right? If we're looking only at the number of wins, well, then we're going to get a whole bunch of recent teams that for some reason are winning a lot of games, and I'm not entirely sure I understand why, right? I would argue that you should look at championships. Now, that's going to make some people upset, right? We're not going to say that the 06 Cubs don't belong. I would say that the 54 Indians still do belong, even though some people think that it's a weak team. I would say that the 2001 Mariners also belong. However, I would still give props to a team that actually won the championship. In other words, though I wouldn't think that for a greatest teams league, you'd want to put the 87 Mets in, or I'm sorry, 87 Mets, 87 Twins in. If you were going to make an argument between like the 1987 Minnesota Twins and I don't know, give me like a good team from the 80s that didn't win the World Series, I don't know, like the 1983 Baltimore Orioles, right? I would take the Twins over the Orioles regardless of the regular season record because you won the World Series. It's got to count for something, right? The level of difficulty does matter for teams like this. And so, you do have to look into the season. That's where the 54 Indians kind of fall apart, right? I would say that I would take a team like, I don't know, the 78 Red Sox in over the 54 Indians because the Red Sox had a lot harder competition while the Indians were out there beating up on the Red Sox and the Orioles. Interleague play also kind of screws stuff up. So if you're in that interleague era after 97, heaven help you. I don't know. It's going to be hard. I would say you need to mix it up. It's better to have a whole bunch of small leagues instead of having one big league. We can talk about that a little bit later, but I'd recommend having a bunch of small leagues with 8 teams each in which you're making sure you don't have the same teams with the same players playing against each other instead of trying for a big league with like 64 teams. I think there are better ways you can split it up, and then you can have some sort of complicated postseason type of performance. So those are sort of what my feelings are on this subject. I'd be really interested to know what kind of the rest of you think, how you guys think, we could make this kind of measurement, or if we even should try. Is this just a complete waste of time and we should just conclude that baseball today is better than it ever was in the past, and this is just a bunch of old guys who need hobbies, who are just sitting around arguing and yelling at each other about players they never saw play anyway? So, I mean, I'm up for whatever conclusion you might have. Let me know down in the comments below. I welcome everything, including people berating me. So talk to you again later. Take care. Bye.